I grew up in a place where there wasn't much to do. Electronics became a hobby. I got interested in radio. I liked geeky, nerdy electronic stuff.
Welcome to the Safer Sundays podcast, where we talk everything surveillance, security, personal data, and privacy. I'm Chris, and today we have with me Scott Bain, the CEO of SaferCities. Welcome along.
Hey there, Chris. Glad to be here.
Thank you very much for coming. So I guess the idea for today's episode is you and I are just going to nerd out. We're going to talk about technology, how we got into it, what we like about technology, and just sort of have a bit of a free-form discussion.
Cool.
So let's kick it off. So we're both from SaferCities. I'm the CTO and Scotty's the CEO. Scotty, why don't you talk to us about how you and I actually met?
Okay, that goes a long way back to when you were still at school. So I had just returned from Silicon Valley in 2008, and the director of ICT from St Kitts, the amazing Walter Chang, said, Scotty, you have to meet this amazing guy. He wants to do some cool networking stuff, and he wants to be like you. And I said, I'm sure he doesn't want to be like me, Walter, but I'm happy to meet him. So that was 2009, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
And so I've been back a year, and that was your second to last year of school.
Yes, it was.
So I mean, I'm actually trying to think what happened then, right? Like we just met, and whether you actually did any work.
Yeah, we met. You took me into Cisco where you were working, and I think we sort of just hung out for the day and talked about all sorts of things. And I think it might have been about 6 months later. You always talk about your wife sort of saying, "Hey, remember that guy Chris that you took on that thing? Why don't you get him to help you with us?"
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I guess that's when I started coming around to your place and seeing your cool networking cabinet that you had in the kitchen, which really...
That was true. I remember you idolising over that. It was quite funny to watch because that's what I used to do when I was young. Used to love networking. So so I think I did take you into Cisco Auckland, New Zealand, and I think you had me on later that I was on the phone most of the day.
Pretty much the whole time.
So sorry about that. And then I think I took you back. We went back to Silicon Valley, like you happened to be over there with your family having a holiday, right. And I was over there for some reason, and I took you into where I used to work in there, which was the Cisco business unit that made CCTV. So we had a bit of a look around there, which was good. And I think it was later that year. I think so. Dave Rothwell and I had set the business up, and I was starting not to be able to keep up with the work. And I think Megan, my wife, said, "Why don't you, that nice young man that came through 6 months or a year ago, why don't you ask him if he wants to do any work?" Right. So that would have been you were in your final year at school when you started to do some stuff.
Yeah, it was, and I think I remember. We were sort of working together and building servers and testing stuff out and all that sort of thing, and then. The day of my last exam, I remember I came over so gung-ho, ready to go, and you served me a wine and a beer at the same time, as you like to have. So and that kind of kicked off the full-time work together, right? Which was cool.
And was I breaking the law? Were you 18?
I was, yeah. But probably sounds a little bit dodgy, doesn't it? But it was all in good fun.
It tends to be what I do, so it was obviously, this is part of the culture.
Yep, absolutely. Formed it early.
Mix your drinks together.
Yeah, exactly.
So I remember we did some quite good stuff then, right? So that was probably year 2 of the company, I think, and that's when the problem to be solved was that there was a rather large car parking company in New Zealand that was getting quite a few cars get stolen, and obviously the clients of those cars were not very happy about that, so they were trying to work out what they could do to stop that happening. And I think I threw you the opportunity of just bashing something up as early days of managed services and car parks. So I think we told that particular car park company, don't buy cameras, don't buy video management systems, here's a managed service that will do for you. And if anything out of the ordinary happens in the car park, then you'll be notified as it's happening rather than the day after when the car gets stolen. So I think I just threw you in the deep end with that, and you went and found something, bashed it together, it worked, and we spent quite a few months on that with that particular company. So
yeah, we did. I mean, it was good. It was good fun, that wasn't it? I mean, I guess for me, I was then going into starting at uni, and I think that the awesome part of the company being at that age and stage and the way it was growing was. It was very sort of fly by the seat of your pants, just make stuff work.
Yep.
and you sort of gave me the creative freedom to just go and build it. And I think probably a lot of people thought you were a bit nuts.
Yeah.
Sort of relying on this 18-year-old guy just to go and put some shit together.
Yep.
But sure enough, we kind of pulled through. And I mean, the demo was very successful, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And it was some pretty cool technology that we'd put together. And probably, I guess it was kind of Internet of Things for commercial industry before it was kind of really a thing, wasn't it? So
pretty early days for Internet of Things, pretty early days for that type of a managed service. And I think if I remember correctly, you found a bit of open source to put all that together to make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, and I think, so what happened there in the end, that particular car park company sold quite a few of their car parks, so that didn't end up being a very large deal for us, but it was the year after that we really had I'd seen the video on the train line, and we wanted to connect the train line back to the police temporarily, and I think that was modelled off or expanded from that same first solution that you did.
100% it was, yeah. And it was just sort of, I guess, again, being at uni while that was all happening, I probably spent 90% of my lectures actually building cool software, right? Rather than actually focusing. I mean, I did fail a paper that I had to redo because I didn't listen to the guy and I was just, writing software.
I did not know that.
A lot of people used to ask me, what are you doing in class all the time? And I'm like, I'm actually building some cool stuff, right? So I guess we've been able to bounce ideas off each other in so many ways, and that works really well, doesn't it, for the two of us? Being able to sort of take a problem, define it technologically, and then just pull stuff together to make it happen.
I think your skill that I've never seen, I've been fortunate enough to work all around the world, and you've heard me say this a number of times, but for people on the podcast, but your ability to reverse engineer anything, protocol, I think outside the box, is extremely rare, and something that I'm sure you'd encourage other people to try and experiment with, right?
Absolutely, because, I think, it kind of, for me, and thank you, right? It does come naturally, right? It's like people that are really good mechanics. They they can look at an engine and work out what's going wrong, right? And the same for me. But there's a lot of fun in sort of looking at a problem and going, how am I going to solve this with technology and make it work a lot better?
Yeah.
And a lot of reverse engineering is part of that.
Yeah.
But it's having that hunger to actually get in there and understand what's happening. Yeah. And then come along and actually fix it, which is a lot of fun.
So I think the thing with New Zealanders, and this is sort of some other advice to people listening to the podcast, I think I used to think when I was young that other people in the world, not in New Zealand, were better, smarter, faster than us, and able to work things out and design protocols and systems. And as I worked around the world, I found out they actually weren't. And people like yourself, Chris, are smarter than a lot of people I met in other parts of the world, just because of the way you think and the way you turn things upside down and do your research. So I would encourage anyone just to be like that. I don't think living in New Zealand or any country should hold you back from that.
No, I mean, I guess we're seeing that a lot with the advent of remote work and everything too, aren't we? People are sort of able to. I mean, technology is making it a lot easier for people to get into and get started with stuff like that. And you're starting to see lots of people in, maybe some more developing sort of countries actually really harnessing technology because they're hungry for it, right? And they just want to understand. There's so many resources online on how to get into all this sort of stuff. You hear the likes of Musk talk about, he almost doesn't like hiring people that have graduated from university. Not that that's an advertisement not to do that. You actually told me to finish my degree even though I wanted to start earlier. So there are, but as I say, what Musk was going on about was the idea that people can just learn everything online for free. You can just go and find absolutely anything you want. And I mean, a large part of my job on a day-to-day basis is just reading and learning. They sort of say school teaches you how to learn rather than teaching you actually the stuff you need to know. And certainly in our industry, that's kind of what ends up happening, right? I mean, just today we had a meeting with some of the team, and we were all on Google the whole time finding stuff out. And so that's learning technology in that sense is awesome, right, and really enjoyable. So
I think the next amazing thing that you did, right? So we used the platform that you developed for the parking to temporarily connect the train stations to the police, and that was only I think I only envisaged that being for 6 or 12 months, until the Department of Transport put in their bigger video management system. But then we had the opportunity, if you remember, someone brought us an opportunity to connect all the stadiums for police up and down the country. And they'd seen that software, and they said, we'll do the networking, you guys do the software, right? So I remember we responded to that. I probably didn't involve you too much in that response. I just responded and then came back and told you 2 weeks before Christmas that we'd actually won that opportunity. And you had Christmas and a couple of weeks into January to actually build what really was the start of the VGrid SaferCity platform. And I still remember the person who brought that opportunity to us being a little bit worried when they found out that we hadn't actually written the software that was part of that solution. But you delivered, Chris, and and everything came up by the end of January, and the police were happy, and the stadiums were happy, and FIFA were happy. So I guess that deep end material, that's often when the best stuff happens.
Oh, 100%. I mean, there's probably a little mild bit of ADHD in there that just sort of, that deadline thing that's coming up, and the excitement of, crap, I really got to get this done. But I mean, that was actually, to be honest, quite an enjoyable Christmas, New Year, because it sort of had purpose, I really struggled when I was at school, because it was like, why am I building all this crap just to get examined on it? Whereas, that sort of thing, it was like, well, this could actually really turn into something massive, and we're doing it for police, all the right reasons, all that sort of stuff. And to see it actually come to fruition. When did we go live with? When was everything live? It was sort of the end of January, wasn't it?
End of January, I think it was 2016, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I was just trying to think what year it was, but it was very quick. I mean, the police loved them to pieces, but they had left their run way too late.
They did, yes.
And so they told us, middle of December of 2015 that, okay, guys, you've won, but by the way, we'd like it all up by the end of January, right? And you hadn't even really written the software. No. So that was pretty cool. And which, and I think fair, like you're obviously fearful that would you be able to write the software in time? I think fear does motivate. I've seen it happen with you a lot. I've seen it happen with myself.
Yeah,
when your back's up against the wall, that's often when the good stuff comes out.
Yeah,
it's not very pleasant at times.
No,
but
that one certainly was. That was a lot of fun. And I think it's always one of those things too, right? You look back on it and you go, "Wow, that was cool." Like we really.
Were you on holiday? Did you spend some of that on a bus in Europe too? Did you? Was it?
Yeah, well, so because we had the first. What was it for? It was for Cricket World Cup and FIFA, right? And so the Cricket World Cup that was first. Then they had a whole lot of. I think they had about a month and a half, right. 6 weeks. And they wanted a whole lot of stuff changed. And I sat at the front of the bus the whole time that we would, right. Every time we were on the bus, I was on it.
Coding,
fixing things
very
up.
Cool.
And that's a really core memory of that trip, is actually, sitting on the bus while everyone else is having a sleep and just being so driven and excited to...
So that's about as remote teleworking as you can get on a bus in Europe.
In Europe, yeah. Writing some software for the police,
for the New Zealand police and the government.
Yeah, and we wouldn't change it for anything, right?
No.
Yeah, so Scotty, so tell me, what kind of inspired you to get involved in technology?
As a little 6-year-old, I saw a Thomas Edison movie, and he was inventing the light bulb, and I said, that's me, I want to invent something. So it all started there. Probably helped with my father, who I guess was trying to get me interested in various hobbies, and made a little light bulb thing, which I was gravitated to, and cool. That's where it all started. That's all we had back then, just light bulbs and wires and batteries. It was about as high-tech as it got, Chris. Saw you laughing.
So after sort of seeing the Thomas and Edison thing, what was sort of the next few years of your life in terms of getting into technology?
So I think a little bit like you. I think I used to take things apart and try and fix them and try and put them back together. Had a little workshop. I mean, I grew up in a place where there wasn't much to do. So electronics became a hobby. I got interested in radio, early days of communication. So I liked geeky, nerdy electronic stuff. So wasn't as good as you at it, but I used to pretend that I was, right? So
yeah, well, I mean, you've told me a lot about sort of your ham radio days and stuff. I mean, what was some of the stuff that you did with the ham radio that really excited you? I mean, you've talked to me about beamforming and all that sort of thing. Yeah,
I used to enjoy how radio waves move through the air and propagated. I was fascinated with that. You've got to look at where New Zealand is in the world. We're a long way away from everywhere else. So I can remember as a 12-year-old being quite excited when I was taken around to a ham radio guy's place, and there he was talking on his radio to some guy in a Jeep driving down Los Angeles highway. I thought that was pretty cool, right? So this is before the internet. Internet was probably getting built sort of early 80s, but hadn't been built yet. So I've always been interested in communications and collaborations and pulling people together, and I think that's probably what the attraction was with ham radio.
And probably quite a natural progression, I guess, for you to go into telecommunications or networking, right, with Cisco.
And I always remember my parents trying to talk me out of telecommunications. So back then, before it was Spark, it was Telecom. Before it was Telecom, it was the New Zealand Post Office. And that had just been sold to Telecom. And I remember my parents saying to me, Scott, don't go into telecommunications. It's just been sold. There's no future in it.
Wow.
It's not going to happen. And luckily I didn't listen to them, because that was, I guess, the next decade afterwards was when the internet was built, and there was some communications going on then with the rise of Cisco and the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you spent quite a bit of time actually, I guess, working with Telecom, didn't you? Sort of helping them out of all their NEX exchanges and all that sort of thing.
Yep, I did.
I love that story.
Yeah, well, the early days of ADSL or the management systems, which
I'm trying to remember exactly which one it was. Sort of when you're going back and forth to Wellington.
Yeah, so I think what I enjoyed doing. So I was I got the Cisco engineering qualification. The Cisco CCIE that you hassle me that how did I even get that? But it was I had a brain back then. And so then I was able to design some quite complex networks for Telecom, and they were the networks that enabled Telecom staff to manage all of the exchanges that we used to make phone calls and internet and all that. So quite cool stuff, pretty complex. I used to think New Zealand was big back then, and it was just great to be involved in that and making a difference. And then if you think of the late 90s is when the internet really started to take off. And so we all wanted to get high-speed internet at home, and that was the early days of ADSL.
Yeah.
And I remember being fortunate enough to design the TCP/IP addressing structure for New Zealand for that, which doesn't seem like a big deal now, but back then it was all new.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then luckily enough, Cisco, rang me up at the start of 2000, and I had the opportunity to join Cisco, which, then Cisco was pretty much the company in the world. If you wanted to do anything to do with networking, you joined Cisco. And so I was able to join Cisco at the start of 2000, which then took me around the world, which was great. Came back and met you, and now we've built SaferCities together. So
here we are, yeah.
It's all good stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, interesting journey, right? Like, I guess, you sort of said earlier, how I'm good at reverse engineering and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, you probably need to reflect on yourself too, that it's actually a lot of that stuff, it wasn't easy to go on the internet and find all this stuff out. And you were actually nutting it out by actually doing the physical stuff as well, right? So it's kind of we've probably both got that inherent gene of stumbling on technology, kind of going, this is how it should work, and because our brains are wired the right way, that is kind of how it works.
Yep.
And then we enjoy it enough that we continue on with it.
I think the thing to do, and for people to listen to on the podcast, is to follow your intuition, follow your gut. Like I see you do it all the 100%. Time in technology. I do it all the time, and I'll just see something, I'll start thinking about something. That's probably why you and I work well together, because I'll say, what about this, Chris? Have you ever seen, how would we do that? And you go, let me think about that, Scotty, we'd do that way. So that, I just always suggest that people should listen to themselves and take that stuff seriously, because there is, if it hasn't been invented yet, then you need that sort of thought process.
Yeah, there's nothing stopping you, right? I mean, I guess a lot of people sort of, probably more and more so now, I'm sort of noticing it's harder and harder to get into technology because there's so much more of it, but you just got to start somewhere and do something, Like, I know of people that lost their jobs during COVID, and one of these guys decided he wanted to learn how to program, and he did it.
Yeah.
And he actually ended up getting a job back after the lockdowns finished. But he could have been a very successful programmer. So it's just, like you say, follow your gut, follow your intuition, try stuff. Because at the end of the day, it's all ones and zeros, and that's kind of just how it works, right? So technology is not like a math problem or something like that. Like it's probably kind of is, maybe is a bit like a math problem, but it's not like art where it's conceptual and it's kind of all everywhere. It'll either work or it won't. And if you're playing around with computers, you can't really break anything. You're not going to cause any real damage to anything. So go ahead and do it.
So I got a question for you, because as part of my engineering qualification, I had to do a bit of programming, but I don't think I was very good at it, right? I could do it, but it was pretty averagely, yet I love networking. So do you think you need a special type of a brain to program? Do you see some people that can program, some people that can't? Is there any way you'd say if someone thought they wanted to program, what they could do to work out whether they were good at it or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I don't think I'm a particularly good programmer. I'm just a good problem solver, right? And so for me, it's about looking at something and going, I probably, like you said before, follow intuition, right? Like it probably isn't working because of this. And then as you do that, as that happens to you more and more and more and more and more, you work out that, oh, okay, and you get a bit of prior knowledge. And when you look at stuff programming wise, you go, oh, yeah, okay, I can see the problem because you've experienced it so many times in the past.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't actually get into technology to be a programmer. I wanted to be a network engineer, like you were, right? Which is kind of the attraction, because I liked telecommunications and networking, all that sort of stuff. But my brain kind of just went, oh, well, if I can kind of work this stuff out, and off we went. When I was younger, my dad used to take motors apart with me, right? And like, to me, I can look at a motor or a little carburetor on a motor and go, yeah, okay, it's not working because of X, Y, and Z. You kind of, if you're a problem-solving sort of person, to me anyway, I think you can get into programming or technology.
Yeah, wow. Cool.
Probably network engineering is the same. Like you can kind of, you and I, we get involved with these networking problems and we go, without really understanding protocols at their very low level, you and I can look at something and go, yeah, it's probably not working because of this.
Yeah, there's a concept, there's a feel.
There's a feel, and that's kind of what it is. Again, to me, that's just problem solving, and it's just having a logical brain, and that isn't everyone. The world would be very boring if we were all logical people. But yeah, ultimately, it's just it'll work. It'll work or it won't, and there's always one reason why.
You and I and Adam from SaferCities will often talk about the fact that we're the architects, a bit like the architects you get in to design a house before you get the builders to actually build it and supply all the wood. And so I think from a networking engineering point of view, what I used to like about being a network engineer is you kind of know the rules, how to build the foundations, and then the network works over the top of it. So I have always seen those as different disciplines in terms of software programming and solving problems, as opposed to network, which is just understanding how to build foundations of a house. But to your point, I still remember one big massive data center move one night for telecom, and the network didn't come up, and it was 4 o'clock in the morning, and I would have been in serious trouble if we hadn't got the network back. But it was understanding the protocols, and as you say, conceptually trying to work out. It feels like it's over in this area, so I think anyone can do that, because anyone who understands enough about what they're doing can do it if they're a problem solver. So totally agree with that.
Yeah, 100%.
The other thing I was going to bring in to you is, so you were interested when I took you over to Cisco, and Cisco, for me, from 1985, from when it was founded by the husband and wife team, to probably mid-2000s, was a fast-growing, really interesting company. And I always used to think, in my naive 20s, that they had it all mapped out from day one. It was all perfect, and they were going to build this, and it was going to happen, and then they were going to build the internet. And so, having spent 10 years in Cisco and met a lot of people who were involved in the early days, what was really fascinating to hear, which everyone should think about, is that it was completely haphazard, a lot of luck, sales guys going out, much like I've done to you, selling stuff that you hadn't even built, coming back, you had to build it. That went on a lot in the early days of Cisco, and I guess it's just a bit of luck and a bit of hard work. And it was software programmers I met there who had 3 nervous breakdowns in the first 3 or 4 years of Cisco. So I think a lot of companies are built like that, and there's a lot of failure and a lot of arguments and debates, but
yeah, I mean, we certainly had our heated discussions, don't we? But it's always it always ends up being in a better place because of it. But yeah, to your point around there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that isn't necessarily perfect. I mean, our software platform now is really rock solid and it's awesome, right? But certainly in the early days, a lot of it was, you're right, I mean, there was luck, but also a lot of hard work. If it broke at 1 o'clock in the morning, cool, we had to fix it. But there is this notion with programmers sometimes where they want everything to be absolutely perfect and to never break. And that can kind of be, I forget what the phrase is, it's like perfection's the enemy of progression or whatever it is, right? Like if you make it perfect, you're not going to be moving forward fast enough
Yeah.
to actually finish
Yep.
things. And you used to challenge me and us and our team a little bit in the early days as well. Like, why don't we let's just get it out the door? And I remember thinking, Scotty, like, we shouldn't be doing this, man. Like, it's going to break. And it's like, don't care, just get it out. It'll be fine. And that's your experience, learning that overseas and seeing that, you should have moved fast with things. But like, let's just build stuff and get it out the door. I mean, we do a lot of that, right? Like we do, one of our big customers that we've got at the moment, we have been fortunate enough that they're sort of a partner of ours, aren't they? Right. And they've said to us, just give us the raw code as soon as you've finished it before you've even done any testing. And there's certainly being able to do that and evolve with a customer on things like that. And we did that with Vigrid in the early days, didn't we? It was sort of very, guys, this bit here is probably going to break. We're only going to give it access to a few people. Test it out. Tell us what you think. That customer input's really important.
And that's a particularly wonderful customer, right? Because they really truly do value the partnership. Even New Zealand Police before them, though, if you look at how Vigrid Safer platform has evolved,
100%.
It's evolved because we've listened to them. We've, they probably want 100 features, but we've worked together on which of the features are most important. If you look at the success of Vault, co-design with the guys that solved the Grace Mullane case. I mean, if we didn't have them, it probably wouldn't have turned out as well as it had. So I think that's always been good. The one of the Cisco guys I was talking about, I can always remember him saying, Scotty, it's pretty impossible to design software without bugs in it. You simply can't test for every single permutation. So you've just got to cross your fingers a little bit and go for it, which I never liked hearing because it was around the time that I started flying lots of Airbuses, which are all software aviation, but multiple systems there backed each other up. It seemed to be okay. But I think that what is it? The thing about don't let perfect stand in the way good enough or something like that.
Absolutely.
Probably got that term a little bit wrong.
I mean, and as we've been talking about, that's definitely just getting stuff out the door and testing it. There's lots of resources out there on, lots of videos of people that have got into, the sort of that startup culture scene or whatever, and they're all just like, just ship something out the door. If you have to have a manual process, just do it. There's this one guy in particular I follow who, he uses really outdated technology and he hacks stuff together, and he posts very publicly how much money he's making. And this guy's making like $1 million US a year on some technology that's, really old. And he's doing AI stuff and he's testing things, and people go, it's breaking and it's not working properly. But he's like, if I waited till it to be finished to get it out there, would never do anything. And he's doing really well for himself. He's a one-man band and he makes a huge amount of money. Not that that's what it's all about, but certainly for him, if a good programmer would look at how he built stuff, they'd turn around and they'd be disgusted. But actually, it serves a purpose.
And a lot of entrepreneurs would say the same with startups, like just start, just get going. You've had guys on your team before, Chris, though, that have sort of trailed behind you and tidied the code up or made it a lot more,
100%.
Structured, I guess, for want of a better word. So, do you think that's important to have different people on the team? Some go out there and
100%.
trailblaze.
And even I mean, you've got to. I think what's really important is to balance testing new stuff out in a way where it's not free from bugs or it's not being tested properly and all that sort of thing. So I certainly like the thing of I'm just going to go build it in a really hacked together way. Does the concept work? Does the flow kind of work? Yep, cool, it does. Okay, let's take a step back and do it properly.
Cool.
And we have guys on the team now that are like that, right? And without them, my job would be a lot harder because my brain doesn't work in the way of if I click this button and then I click it 400 times quickly after each other, is that going to cause a problem? I just click it, it works, next thing, right? Like sort of move a million miles an hour, whereas it is really good to have people that are just checking and testing
and I think in a startup that wants to be leading edge and see if the software solves a problem in the way that police and public safety are going to benefit from it, we actually need that
absolutely
fly by the seat of the pants stuff. does the concept work? Does it solve the problem? Right, it does. Then let's
go and do it
tidy
properly.
it up later. Right?
Yeah, 100%. Because we do need to. I mean, we're in a very privileged position with the customers that we have of how important the software is to them.
Yeah.
Certainly you go into a comm center and you can see our application on every police desk, and that is phenomenally exciting.
Yeah.
And so we are in a position where, yes, we can go and test features really quickly and push them out, but then we do need to take a step back and go, right, let's make sure this really isn't going to break anything. It's really rock solid, and that's really important.
And I still remember Kerry, who used to be one of your developers, saying it's a shame that someone has to make software like vGrid SaferCity platform is, but someone does have to make that software, and that's why I want to join the company, right? It does make a difference.
100%.
And that feels pretty good.
So, Scotty, talk to me about some technological advancements you've sort of seen in your career so far and what you found interesting.
I found, Chris, that most things move slower than the market wants them to. I think, a lot of vendors think things are going to happen quicker than they do. Probably only exception I can think of to that would be voice over IP.
Right.
I think that actually took off like a rocket. Probably took 2 or 3 years to change the whole market. And I think Cisco threw it out there and released it pretty quickly. And talk about bugs and things going wrong. I think they had quite a few of those in the first 2 years, but they got there. The thing I noticed, though, in terms of not moving super fast and all that, but I can still remember picking up the first Apple iPod. So this would have been 2000 and, it might have been end of 2000 or 2001. And there was something about the way it was made. I just couldn't put it down. I wasn't particularly an Apple person back then, but it just felt like quality. It felt really nice. And I looked at it for 6 months and thought, if I buy this iPod, which I want to, I've then got to buy an Apple computer, and it was all very proprietary back then. But there was something about Apple back then. And then I bought my first laptop, and that didn't crash. And so that was a funny time, and you've heard this story before, where I saw something and felt something in Apple that a lot of my Cisco VPs didn't. And I wanted to invest in Apple back then, and they took me out of it. So I went and bought a sports car instead, which was a really bad move. but there was enough of the quality of the product and the way the product felt, which the rest of the market hadn't quite caught up with yet. Yep. And then map ahead, probably 5 years from that time, 2006, when I lived in Silicon Valley, and they released the iPhone, and I can remember seeing loads of cars in the car park one particular weekend because we lived very close to Apple, and I wondered what that was about, and it was the iPhone, right? So I think, I don't know, it comes back to the thing that we've always had in SaferCities with, make a good product, that solves a good problem, and if you get it right, as Jonathan Ive used to say, that when you get the product right, the market will come, and that certainly happened with us in vGrid and SaferCities. So.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's probably I haven't seen anything that's taken off like a rocket ship, and I guess at the moment, like, we've heard about video analytics for 15 years, and now we're hearing about AI applied to CCTV, and sure, it'll happen and it'll make things better, but it's never as fast in my view, from what I've seen in my 30 years in the industry, as what the industry want it to be. Yeah,
and I guess we probably a lot of technology industry is around people finding a solution to a problem that doesn't exist yet, right? Or trying to, I guess, shoehorn stuff in and going, hey, there's this really cool new piece of technology. How are we going to use it? What sort of product are we going to make? And then they jump and they make a product, and then they're trying to drive customers into it rather than actually finding a problem that's existing and then solving it with technology.
Absolutely.
And I mean, analytics is a classic example of that. Certainly in my time in the sort of CCTV industry, it has been probably from the get-go, when we were sort of working together, it's going to be analytics and everything's going to solve everything. And I mean, even now, we're just starting to see some really cool tech. We met some interesting people at ASIAL, and some really cool stuff around people counting and be able to move things around the place and then sort of recalculate where people were and all that sort of thing. And that's fascinating stuff, but it still takes a lot of configuration, and it's got to be monitored and tuned and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of, like you say, sort of a lot of technology that comes a long way, and people try and push it really quickly. But there's actually all the hidden stuff in behind it that makes it really still really complicated to use and slow to sort of take off.
You still need the human factor at the end of the day. I mean, it's interesting. What are we now? 2023, and I can remember hearing about video analytics and all of this in 2006. So it's and the industry thought it was going to take off back then, right? So, as you know, as you'll tell me, processing power gets faster, and and there's all the great NVIDIA stuff and all that, but it still takes longer often than what people think, and you still need people at the end of the day to make it all work and to see if the computer's doing the right thing.
So Scotty, we've been talking for a long time, so probably what we're going to do is cut this into 2 episodes. So for people following along, join us on the next podcast episode to continue this discussion.